Kawhi Leonard goes over 30 points again. He did it in Game 4. It's the 14th game this postseason that he scored 30 or more points. That accomplishment ties him with Kobe Bryant and LeBron James for the most 30-point games in a single postseason over the last 10 years. Kawhi Leonard's such a unique personality and player, and you just try and talk to as many people as you can because you don't get a ton from Kawhi, so you have to do some background with some folks who have been along the journey with him. And one of those guys is Brian Dutcher, who's the head coach at San Diego State, was an assistant under Steve Fisher when Kawhi Leonard was recruited to be a part of the Aztec basketball program. Brian joins us now here on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. Brian, appreciate the time this morning here on Sunday morning. Has anything surprised you about this run Kawhi Leonard has been on here in the playoffs?
I guess if hard work is rewarded, then no. I mean, he spends his summers here in San Diego. He works out in our practice facility. And a lot of guys, when they're working out, if you go into the gym, they'll stop the workout, come over, say hello, give you a hug, and then get back to work. When you walk in on Kawhi, he won't stop what he's doing, and you better not interrupt him. His work ethic is incredible. And it might be an hour, it might be 2 hours. But when he's done, he'll come over and say hello like anybody else would. But once he's working, he's working.
Brian, there's been a lot of talk about the limited talk we get from Kawhi and just his demeanor and maybe not the most outspoken guy. Does any of that surprise you, or has he always been that way?
He's always been the quiet guy. Even when we were recruiting him, I remember Coach Fisher said, we're not going to get this guy. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't give us any acknowledgement that he's interested, but that's just in his nature. So because of the job Justin Hudson did, one of our assistants, and the rest of the staff, we just hung in there because we knew he liked us. He just wasn't a big talker. And so in that regard, he hasn't changed much at all.
Brian Dutcher is the head coach at San Diego State, former assistant there when Kawhi Leonard was a player with San Diego State. Here on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, Matt Schickmeyer and Metcalf, Sunday morning on ESPN Radio. How does a guy like Kawhi Leonard, who has turned into obviously top 5, if not top 3 player in the NBA, how does he get missed in the recruiting process by the, quote, bigger programs like an SC, like a UCLA? What did you see that they didn't? How did he go under the radar?
The common thought on Kawhi back then is he wasn't big enough to be a 4-man, and he wasn't skilled enough to be a 3-man. And so he was kind of in that tweener range. And you have to realize UCLA and USC and Arizona, they all signed elite players. So it wasn't like they just said, well, this is the only guy out there, we have to take him. I think UCLA took Tyler Honeycutt. I think Derek Williams was taken by somebody. And Kawhi was there, and I remember going to a workout his junior year after the season had finished. And I walked out of the gym, and I called back to the office. I said, I think this guy's going to be an NBA player. Now, I've said that before and been mistaken. But when I watched him work out, I thought he was phenomenal. And there was a Pac-12 head coach at the same workout I was at, and they worked out and didn't think he was good enough for him. So it's all in the eyes of the beholder. Sometimes you have to get lucky. If you don't know the work ethic and the character of an individual, sometimes you don't get blessed with that until you get him on campus, and that's what we were blessed with, a guy with an incredible work ethic and a desire to be great.
So you both watch the same workout and see two completely different things. What was it about this workout that you saw that you said this guy's going to be a pro?
Probably for me, just his motor, and then I remember distinctly that he was pulling up and shooting jump shots in. And so back when Kawhi was out of high school, even when he was with us, the jump shot was more on the top of his head. He moved it out front after he got to the NBA. But I think the thing that kind of drives me crazy is when I hear him talk about Kawhi, they always say he was a 4 and 5 man for San Diego State because I think it sounds good. But you have to realize Kawhi played 1 through 4 for us. He played our point guard. He played the 2. He played the 3. And so if anybody goes back and digs any clips of Kawhi up and watches how he played for San Diego State, you would say you could see him on that path the way he played.
Brian, one noticeable advantage that Kawhi has over everyone on the court is his massive hands and the strength he has in those hands. Do you have any stories about sort of that freak of nature thing with him that, showed itself when you were coaching him?
I was blessed to be with Chris Webber at Michigan with Coach Fisher, and I thought those would be the biggest hands that I would ever see a player have. And then we got Kawhi, and it was like, oh, my gosh, this guy has bigger hands than Webber. And so those hands, and even his shoulders, I mean, you look at his length of his arms, and a lot of what he has is God-given. But God-given talent alone is not enough. It's that combined with work ethic has led him to be the player he's going to be. Now, I thought he had a chance to be an NBA player, but nowhere in my wildest dreams did I believe he would be one of the top 5 players in the world. You'd have to be a visionary to see that.
Brian Dutcher is the head coach at San Diego State, part of Steve Fisher's staff that recruited Kawhi Leonard at San Diego State. He was the class of 2009 with the Aztecs. The stories have come about over the last week. There's a story in The Athletic of his trash talk where he'd say bucket, layup. It was as soft spoken as his news conferences tend to be. Board man gets paid. Those types of quotes. Do you have anything like that you got to witness firsthand?
I like to give the guys a hard time on the floor. So if Kawhi had missed a shot, I would say something. He says, "But they're fouling me." That was his thing to me. Always was, "They're fouling me on this." And I said, "Come on, Kawhi, you're not getting fouled." So I always like to kid with him about that. But, no, he was soft-spoken. He let people know what he was feeling on the floor. And you have to realize he led us to a 34-3 record that year. We lost twice to Jimmer Fredette at BYU, who everyone knows was a prolific scorer. And then the next game we lost was to Kemba Walker in the Sweet 16, and they went ahead and won the national championship. So Kawhi was on a team and a big part of a team that was capable of going all the way his sophomore year.
Brian Dutcher, head coach of San Diego State. One last thing. So you recruited him out of high school. So obviously that's a long time ago. But you had to learn something about him in recruitment and what he values. I wonder if there's anything there in terms of how you persuaded him to come to San Diego State that could give some sort of indication of what he will value when his free agency comes up here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, the beauty of Kawhi is, like, we hear about Kyrie's free agency, especially since the season's over for him, and KD's. But as big a free agent as Kawhi is, we don't really hear much about it because he doesn't talk about it. He's very quiet, and so I don't think he's thought a thing about it. Maybe in the back of his mind, I think he's so singularly focused on helping Toronto win a title that he's not concerned about it. He's not thinking that far ahead. He's in the moment. That's what makes him great, because he's able to stay in that moment, not be distracted.
Brian Dutcher, appreciate you recollecting with us on your time with Kawhi. Thanks for making the time here for us.
Thanks
for having me, guys.